Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today on what will be an in-depth exploration of the creating, the cutting, and the grading of 8X fancy-shaped diamonds. You probably won't be surprised to hear that since 2020 rather, more than 50% of the stones submitted to our lab have been fancy shaped. I'm sure many or most of you are seeing that same trend in your stores. Well, there'll be time at the end for your questions, so please click on the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we will try to respond to as many of your questions as we possibly can. Also, be aware that a copy of this presentation will be sent to you and made available in a day or two, and you'll be able to view it again at your leisure or share it with anybody you want. We welcome you to share it with everybody. Okay, let's get into the presentation. Compared to the challenges of creating the first 8X round, fancy shapes are like the Wild West. The ambitious obstacles and challenges of researching the science behind cutting extraordinary fancies were significant. Yes, it took longer than expected, but we were thrilled with the reactions to the oval and the princess, and are also very proud of the comments and the reactions we're hearing to the new shapes, the Marquise and Pear. So with that, allow me to introduce you to our speakers who will take you on this incredible educational journey behind the creation of 8X fancy-shaped diamonds. Angelo Palmieri is the president of GCAL by Serene, responsible for overseeing all operations. Angelo has played the critical role in spearheading the development of the 8X cut grade, the introduction of digital certificates, and the implementation and incorporation of high-resolution imaging and video technology into the lab process. Angelo's unwavering commitment to innovation continues to elevate GCAL's status as a true leader in the diamond certification sector. Eric Castillo has been with GCAL almost 6 years and is the senior lab technician focused on primarily research and technology. Working with Angelo, Eric has been instrumental in the critical development of the fancy shape parameters. And in addition, he works tirelessly reviewing the 8X files sent to our lab by cutters from around the world, determining which stones will likely pass or fail. And that's incredibly important to manufacturers overseas because they don't want to ship stones to us hoping they'll become 8X. They want to be able to send files to us. Okay, moving right along. Before I hand the presentation over to Angelo, I'd like to take a minute to familiarize you with some of the exclusive added value benefits that GCAL offers, starting with that grading guarantee. We are the only diamond grading certificate in the world to stand behind our grading with a zero tolerance consumer guarantee. It's also worth pointing out that while other labs grade diamonds and issue a report, GCAL certifies diamonds and issues a guaranteed certificate. We're the only lab in the world where a diamond gem print fingerprint image is captured and stored in a database for future stone comparisons. While no two humans have the same fingerprint, it's the same for diamonds. We're the only gem lab in the world to have earned the prestigious ISO 17025 forensic accreditation. And let me tell you, when diamond experts are needed in this industry, when they're called upon, whether it's for insurance claims or criminal investigations or whatever the case for expert testimony, it's typically Don and Angelo Palmieri who are called upon. They are the global experts. Extraordinary quality 360 and fire videos are readily available, and GCAL never uses generic images like other labs do. We use photomicrographs only, photos taken of the crown and pavilion of a diamond. Every GCAL full certificate includes direct assessment optical light performance, Same for direct assessment, hearts and arrows. And again, no generic imaging. Finally, GCAL by Serene is proud to continue to offer cut grades on all fancy shapes. Of course, that includes the current 8X fancies. Now I'll hand it over to Angela. Ange?
Thank you, Steve, and thank you all for joining us today. Today, we are going to cover background on fancy shapes, GCAL's research methodology, an overview of the 8Xs, and then each shape aesthetic, which is the finishing touch for the unique evaluation of each fancy 8X. I want to begin today with a question. How many of you educate your customers about the 4 C's every day? And while I can't see a show of hands, I'm confident that everyone here starts with the basics: carat, color, clarity, and the all-important cut. Now on the screen, you see 3 round diamonds that are nearly identical in size, color, and clarity. But the key difference between these diamonds and what makes them look so uniquely different is simply based on the cut. And an accurate, strictly enforced cut grade like we offer at GCAL allows for us to easily distinguish these round brilliant diamonds based upon their cut quality. But today, likely, based on the shifting shape preferences, that at least half of your customers are now looking for fancy shapes. And what do you tell them about the 4th C for fancy shapes? Well, it's cut, but it actually doesn't describe the cut quality. It just tells you the shape outline and the faceting pattern. So the next question is, why aren't most fancy shaped diamonds in the marketplace? Why don't they have a cut grade? Well, it's definitely complicated. There's numerous shapes, faceting patterns, faceting styles. Each shape needs to be individually evaluated. It takes time to research each unique shape. Proportions alone are not even close to being sufficient. It also takes time to capture hundreds of thousands of actual light performance images, videos, assessments, measure them, assign quality scales, catalog them. And of course, there are variances in length to width ratios with most of these fancy shapes. And so as a result, fancy shape cut quality is like the Wild West. Right? And for all of these reasons that I explained make establishing a cut grade for fancy shapes very challenging, throughout today's presentation, you're going to see how we've overcome these obstacles. But the current state of the market leaves you as a retail jeweler in a very difficult position. As the authority figure, consumers are looking to you for your guidance. So let's take a real life example. Customer walks in the store and you decide together that their final request is going to be a 2-carat, pear shape, lab grown diamond, G color, VS clarity, and a stunner. And so hopefully today you call your favorite 8X supplier and request this diamond. But for those who have not experienced the ease of sourcing and selling an 8X certified diamond, you might go to your favorite trading exchange, such as Virtual Diamond Boutique, and you input these criteria. Then you also add XX for polish and symmetry, because for many diamonds, that's the best you can search for. And we plug in that search and you have over 1,000 diamonds to choose from. This is just for 2-carat, pear shape, FG, VS, XX, over 1,000 diamonds to choose from. And as you can see here on the screen, these diamonds obviously come from a multitude of manufacturers, each taking videos and pictures in different orientations, lighting environments, and certainly different camera equipment. And so now it's difficult to determine, is that cut quality below average, or is the stone just misaligned? Is that really an F color? Is that a brown tint? Or is it just different lighting settings? And as you look at these stones thinking these are all the same 4 C's value, what do? Even with images and videos from these manufacturers, you're still left sorting through over 1,000 diamonds. And most of the lab reports, not GCAL, but most of the other lab reports only provide table and depth percentage, leaving you with very few pieces of the puzzle to make an informed decision and place an order. But 8X is the answer. Premium cut, accurately graded, supported by science, and guaranteed by GCAL. Here is, on the previous screen, we saw the pear shape 8X. This is the 8X cert for Marquise shaped diamonds. Here on the screen, you see the verification page for an 8X certified oval. We provide 9 different images and videos of each diamond taken under identical lighting and environmental conditions using the same equipment. And this standardization allows for easy comparison across all diamonds, eliminating the variability found in images and videos taken in different settings. In addition to the 360 video, high-resolution photomicrographs of the crown and pavilion reveal the clarity characteristics of the stone. We directly measure the diamond, assessing the diamond's brilliance, scintillation, and fire through high-quality video and photography. And the optical symmetry of each diamond is meticulously evaluated along with the unique shape aesthetics evaluation. And this comprehensive approach makes our certificate the most transparent and detailed in the marketplace, addressing every question you and your customer may have about the quality and performance grades. Now, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Eric. He's going to briefly cover the methodology we used for the creation of 8X fancy shape standards.
Good afternoon. I just want to take a moment to thank everybody once again for taking the time to be with us today. And then I want to start by explaining a little bit about the methodology we use to establish 8X parameters for fancy shapes. So for the last 20 plus years, GCAL has been assessing the optical light performance of diamonds that pass through our lab. We've captured the optical symmetry, brilliance, scintillation, photomicrographs, and proportions on over 1 million diamonds. Here, you can see just a small sampling of the performance images that we relied upon and data mined when establishing the 8X standards. These examples are real-life optical symmetry images of ovals and princess cuts, all actual photos, no ray-traced or hypothetical images of any kind. And from all this physical and optical data that we've collected, we've identified the top performing diamonds. Then we analyze the proportions and faceting of these diamonds to determine which combinations of facet proportions produce these top tier results. And then with the use of high-level proportion analysis tools that we have here in the lab, we're able to generate wireframe facet diagrams of these stones that label all the faceting, and we can use these to compare side by side with actual laboratory photos to then zero in on the optimal combinations of angles and remove any of the mystery behind what it makes to have one stone stand out compared to another. We're able to observe performance patterns as a result of particular angle combinations. And then sort of like a gigantic puzzle, we can piece together the optimal ranges for producing the most beautiful fancy cuts. So since each shape is a little bit different and produces its own set of challenges, we've created the proportion ranges to address those shape-specific challenges and provide manufacturers the ability to cut 8X fancy shapes at various sizes and link to width ratios while maintaining peak performance in the diamonds themselves. And at the end of this rigorous process that we go through, the final result should be a fancy shaped diamond with optimal light performance, like what we see here on the screen with the brilliance, fire, and scintillation of this particular princess cut. Now, I'm going to turn it back to Angelo, who's going to give a practical overview of each of the 8 X's.
Great. Thanks, Eric. And you're going to hear from Eric a little bit more when we get to the 8th X here. So the GCAL 8X cut grade, as many of you might know, assesses 8 critical factors of cut quality. And really, these 8 X's can be viewed as 3 broader categories. Physical excellence, which is comprised of polish, symmetry, and proportions. Light performance excellence, which is comprised of optical brilliance, fire, and scintillation. and optical excellence, which is comprised of optical symmetry and shape aesthetics for fancy shaped diamonds. And all 8 must achieve a grade of excellent to qualify as an 8X diamond. So as we go through these 8Xs, just understand that it might make it for polish, but it fails for proportions, and it's no longer a candidate for 8X, or it might make all the physical excellence categories, but fail for optical brilliance, and so forth and so on. Now, when we look at the 8Xs for each of the fancy shapes, you're going to notice, we're just going to flip through very quickly on the screen, all of the 8Xs are the same. Shape aesthetics, as Eric's going to cover after I'm complete, is going to be unique for every shape, but every shape is being assessed along these same 8Xs. So this is for the pear, the marquise, and the princess cut. All right. So we're going to go for a brief overview now of each X. The first X is polish. Here we're assessing the diamond's surface and the freeness of scratches, nicks, pits, dop, white polish, and many other features. And here you see a fine scratch on the table facet of an oval. And this is the difference between a very good polish and an excellent. And again, from what I just said, a very good would not be considered as a candidate for 8X. Next, we move to external symmetry, and this is comprised of foundational attributes like table and culet alignment, uniform shape outline, and facet pointing. And here on the screen, you see some minor symmetry faults on the left of the screen that would prevent a diamond from being an 8X. And on the right, a major symmetry fault found in the diagram, just as a quick reference for you. Now, this chart, all of this information is on our website, but this chart represents the narrow proportion ranges accepted for each shape. And as you'll see later on, many of these angles are inversely correlated with one another. So for example, certain crown angles are only permitted with a narrow range of central pavilion half angles, which is key to limiting the bow tie effect. So here on the screen, you see the princess, oval, marquise, and pear proportions. Each one has its own attributes and unique features to them. Now, just to give you a practical example, here we see an example of an average princess cut on the left and an 8X princess cut on the right. And there's 2 noticeable differences in the proportions, which are the crown height, which directly correlates to the brilliance on a princess cut. 8X princesses must have a crown height between 10 and 15%. You'll also see there's 2 distinct pavilion angles that we're measuring. The first pavilion angle is measured from the girdle to the culet. The second is measured from the bottom of the half moon to the culet. And to be an 8X princess, these 2 angles actually have to be at least 20 degrees difference, creating the optimal relationship for maximum brilliance. And these types of examples are seen in each of our 8X shapes. Next, we get to the 4th X, which is optical brilliance. And as most of you know, brilliance is the overall return of white light to the viewer. It's measured by GCAL proprietary technology to the 1,000th decimal place and is represented in images here on the screen. The blue areas are light leakage and the white is light return. So here you see an example on the right of a well-proportioned 8X pear shape, contrasted on the left with a deep stone with severe leakage along the sides of the stone and the head. And you can note the obvious differences in visual appearances here of the brilliance images. The next X is fire. Each fire video is composed of 200 frames. Here you see the princess fire video on the left, but it's composed actually of 200 frames that are processed to analyze the quantity and size of colored light return as the diamond is tipped and tilted. So here you're going to see the image on the right, where we're actually measuring the amount of colored light, the size of the colored light. All of this plays a role into that visible fire that you'll see. Next is scintillation. And scintillation is the flashes of light or sparkle produced when light is reflected from a diamond as it moves. And here are examples of fair to excellent scintillation. And this video actually shows the light return from a single beam as the diamond is tipped and tilted. Scintillation images are all captured and evaluated in full on a square background and then crop to the shape outline on the certificate. And the full scan can be seen on our website. The next X is optical symmetry. Now, optical symmetry, as Steve told you before, everything is an actual photo on our certificate. And this is visualized in these photographs taken in a 5-angle reflector. And so the evenness of the pattern illustrates the precision and uniformity of facet shape and alignment. And here you see the angles at which we capture these images. And you see on the screen princess cuts ranging from fair through good, very good, and excellent. Now, one question that comes up often is how and why external symmetry and optical symmetry could be graded differently for the same stone. And it's a great question with a semi-simple answer. Every single angle, relative angle, facet shape, and facet size contribute to the diamond's optical symmetry. Now, with external symmetry, sometimes these slight differences are imperceptible. But in this diamond, we see significant deviations in angles of the pavilion mains and pavilion halves. And this variation can have a dramatic impact on the optical symmetry of the stone as light is reflected and refracted throughout. So the stone you see here is a great example of this deviation. Whereas we look at the top photo and the optical symmetry photo, you can see pretty significant deviations if you split that stone in half vertically as you look left and right. And while the physical symmetry of this stone is undoubtedly an excellent, the angle differences contribute to this deviation. All right. Here are 4 optical symmetry images of ovals. So even if you haven't seen optical symmetry before today's presentation, I want you to think in your head, from left to right, which one is excellent? Okay, and the one on the far right of the screen is the excellent, and the pattern is very intuitive. The more even the pattern, the more equal the light return, the better the optical symmetry. Now I'm going to turn it over to Eric, who is going to go through the shape aesthetics of each of the fancy shapes.
All right, so the 8th X for fancy shapes is known as shape aesthetics, as we mentioned. This is the one determination that is specific to each shape. So I'd like to go through some of the challenges and commonly observed issues that each shape presents when it comes to 8X qualification, starting with ovals. Seen here in these images is what we call axis symmetry. These are images of the crown and the pavilion showing the symmetry of the stone. And this can be a really useful tool across all shapes, really, to help visualize a stone's physical symmetry, and can help inform why a stone might have certain light performance issues as well. And when we considered what's most important and unique to oval brilliance for cut evaluation, the most obvious features to avoid are bow ties and poor shape outlines. For the unfamiliar, the dark area seen in the center of some ovals and other shapes as well is known affectionately as a bow tie. It's actually blocked light return from the head of the observer, and can really make a stone look lifeless or dull, which is not what the average consumer is looking for in a diamond. For 8X, we're measuring this effect programmatically to ensure that all 8X ovals have a minimal bow tie effect and a pleasant balance of contrast. We are also evaluating the shape outline. Ovals should be like a tapered ellipse shape without any shoulder bulges like we see here in this example, or an uneven egg-like shape. You want it to be an even shape all the way around. And here we have some examples of common issues found in oval stones that would not qualify for 8X. The first stone has a few issues, but most noticeably is a prominent dark bow tie region and an outline that's uneven and could be considered undesirable. So would not be 8X for those reasons. The next stone has visibly imbalanced optical symmetry. You can picture, as Angelo was talking about recently, a straight line down the vertical axis of the image, and then compare one side to the other, noticing that the pattern is quite different on each side compared to the other. Additionally, this stone has what we refer to as shoulder bulge, as I previously mentioned, which is when a stone doesn't have a gently tapered ellipse shape, but instead has bulbous kind of bulbous regions towards the rounded ends of the stone, giving it really almost a cushion-like outline, which is not what you would want for an oval. And then finally, we have an 8X stone. In this image, we can see that the stone has minimal bow tie, pleasantly balanced optical symmetry, and abundant light return, with no major regions of blocked light or light leakage. All right, for the princess cut shape aesthetics category, one of the things we're measuring is the actual squareness of the shape outline. The corner angles for an 8X princess must all be 90 degrees, and the length to width ratio must be 1 to 1.015 maximum. This is much narrower than what you'll find in other cut programs, which commonly allow a ratio of up to 1 to 1.05. This may seem like a relatively small deviation, but it can result in a stone actually looking elongated rather than square. So in the two examples we have on the left here, we see two different axis symmetry images. The upper one has corner angles that are beyond 0.3 degrees from 90 degrees, giving the stone kind of a warped or skewed appearance. Obviously would not qualify for 8X. The lower example, the one on the bottom left, has corners that are all in range, and we can see that the stone looks perfectly square to the naked eye. And this is a stone that could qualify for 8X based on the corners alone. And then in the photograph on the right, you can see that the corners of this stone are skewed, and the ratio of this one is 1.03. And this just illustrates that even at this length to width ratio, the stone is perceivably elongated. Here are a couple more examples of commonly observed issues with non-8X princesses. The first stone has a pretty obviously asymmetrical outline. A stone cut in this manner would stand almost no chance of having balanced optical symmetry, which we can see this stone does not possess. The second example here in this screen is actually quite close to something that we might consider for 8X with one major flaw. And if you look closely, it's center leakage. You can see in the center of the stone there, there's a darker region where it's actually light that's entering through the top of the stone, and instead of reflecting and refracting back to the observer, escapes through the bottom of the stone, essentially creating a dead zone in the center of the diamond. So it looks kind of lifeless in real life, not what you want. And finally, the last example we have here is a stone that speaks for itself. Undeniable symmetry, perfectly symmetrical across the major axes, no leakage in the center, and optimal light return. An additional consideration that we feel is important and somewhat unique to princess cuts is that the corners should all be undamaged. This photo here is an example of a VVS chip on the corner that was rejected for 8X. This type of damaged stone is something that could achieve the highest cut grade in virtually any other cut system, but not for 8X. It's important that we have the corners that remain unblemished. And now, for a bit of a deeper dive into our newest 8X shapes, we're talking about 8X Marquise and Pear. So we're going to start with Marquise. Diving right into these examples here, the first example shows a stone that has a slew of issues, keeping it from achieving a high cut grade, let alone 8X. The first of which is optical symmetry. This stone is obviously not cut very symmetrically. And furthermore, you can see bold regions of blocked light in a few areas throughout the stone. All right, there we go. And in the second example, we see some things that are quite different from the first. And to the untrained eye, this may look like a pretty decently cut stone, But further inspection reveals that the table of the stone is not well aligned with the pavilion of the stone, which leads to light return issues as well. Additionally, there are dark reflections in the bow tie region of the stone, which is something we would not allow for 8X. In the zoomed in image there, you can see actually that the keel line of the stone is running down the center of that circle, and you actually see the pointed tip of the table, how it's pretty dramatically shifted away from that. Those should be perfectly aligned if a stone's going to have perfect physical symmetry. And now, for comparison, on the right-hand side, we have a stone that's achieved our 8X standard, and it exhibits the classic 8X characteristics that we've come to expect: balanced symmetry and minimal bow tie among them. A few more marquee examples here. The first stone we see here also appears to be well cut. However, it's not 8X. You'll notice that the stone has a slightly imbalanced optical symmetry and regions of blocked light, including on one side of the bow tie region, on the left side there of this image. And then towards the top, you see those blockages that appear to be pavilion mains that are not reflecting light back to the user the same way they would be on the bottom of the image there. Okay, in the second example here, we see a stone that is also, in fact, cut quite well. The stone clearly has really nice symmetry, but when it comes to light return, that's where this stone really suffers. It would not take a microscope to see the dark regions of blockage under the table of the stone and near the tips of the stone, and also in the bow tie region. They're pretty bold and hard to miss here. And this is an example of something that could achieve an excellent cut grade, but is not going to make 8X for light return. And then once more for comparison, we see another 8X marquee. And this one, you guessed it, has balanced symmetry and light return through the entire stone. And I'm excited to say the final shape we're going to look at today is the 8X pear. This shape could be thought of almost as a cousin to the marquee in some ways. It's got very similar faceting, and with one obvious major difference, only one pointed tip as opposed to two tips that are pointed. And this introduces some particular challenges, but many of the same principles still apply as far as 8X qualification. In our first example on this slide for pear shapes, we see a familiar issue, and that is, you probably can already guess, a really dark bow tie region. As with marquee and oval stones, this is a deal breaker when it comes to 8X, and for good reason. As previously noted, a stone like this will appear lifeless and dull under the table in a real-world environment. The second issue that we're going to point out here is also easily observable, and that's the stone's outline. A stone with an outline that's observably asymmetrical, like this one, will not qualify for 8X. We really want to see a perfectly symmetrical outline. And now, taking a look at the stone in the middle, we can see that similarly to the previous example, it has a somewhat asymmetrical outline. You can see towards the head of the stone, there's kind of a bump that doesn't match the other side. And beyond this issue, the stone's reflective pattern does not present as a mirror image across the vertical axis, as we mentioned before. You can tell there are deviations in the look from the left side compared to the right, indicating it's not as well cut as you might think on first glance. And the third example, you guessed it, it's an 8X pear. And it doesn't take long to see that this stone possesses the performance characteristics that can be expected from 8X certified stones. Balanced symmetry across the vertical axis, and for this shape, also minimal bow tie region. Okay, two final examples here of commonly observed issues and one more 8X pear for comparison. Looking over on the left, we see a stone that has decent symmetry, but as we take a close look, a couple of shortcomings can be observed. First, the stone appears to have extra heft or kind of bulge towards the tip of the stone. Similarly to 8X ovals, where we look to avoid shapes that possess shoulder bulge, as we mentioned, which affects the elegance of the outline. We look in pear shapes for this extra bulge towards the tip or the point, which also detracts from the perceived gracefulness of the shape itself. Secondly, here, we can see that under the table in this stone, in the central area, there are regions of blockage and weaker light return, those gray areas that aren't as pronounced and white, and then obviously the darker areas. And this means that the stone will not have the same kind of brilliance that we expect to see from 8X stones when we see them in the real world. All right, and then the example in the middle is a very well-cut stone from a physical symmetry standpoint, similar to the penultimate Marquise example we looked at before. And we can see that across this stone's vertical axis, there's actually a really nice mirror image from left to right. However, as we've mentioned, there's a lot more to 8X than just a symmetrical cut. A very common issue that we observe in pear shapes in particular is light leakage at the stone's head. We see this in a lot of even really well-cut pear stones, and also along the girdle near the sides of the stone. And both of those issues can be observed in this stone here, in addition to a somewhat dark bow tie, all things that would keep this stone from achieving an 8X cut grade. And we can tell from this photo that this stone would not perform well in a real-world environment compared to our final example here. And then this final example is another 8X certified pear shape. And just notice the way the stone's the stone's sides taper elegantly down towards the point, and the near perfect axis symmetry and an abundance of returned light. You could probably guess, based on the information we've presented here, that it takes serious precision and careful attention to detail to cut to the tight specifications required to achieve 8X cut grade. You don't need to be, you don't get to be the best by taking shortcuts, and we know that here. And that's why we offer a complimentary service to suppliers to help them achieve this standard of excellence by allowing them to submit files generated from proportion analysis software that we can then review and supply valuable guidance and feedback before their goods are actually submitted to us for grading, giving the stones that they actually submit a better chance of achieving the 8X cut grade. And then here is just an example of the specifications that we send out for each of our 8X shapes to suppliers who are actually cutting the stones. You can think of this document basically kind of like a roadmap to 8X.
Thanks, Eric. There are several added value benefits that are included with every 8X certificate. A GemPrint fingerprint image of your diamond is included. GemPrint is the world's leading diamond identification technology. In fact, every diamond that enters our lab is GemPrinted when it comes in, and it's GemPrinted a second time before we send it out to customers. Every 8X certificate features a superior quality 360 video. Now, I emphasize superior quality because there are a myriad of 360 videos out there, but not with the GCAL quality that we are rather proud of. The spectacular fire video is also included, bringing out the fire or colors of an 8X diamond. Also included with every 8X certificate are photomicrographs, which we've mentioned a few times before. These are actual photos taken of the crown and pavilion of your diamonds. Again, no generic images. A to-scale proportion diagram is included. And finally, a laser inscription that includes the 8X logo and certificate number are included as well. Now, we hear from customers all the time, manufacturers, retailers, wholesalers, consumers call us all the time. I gotta tell you, Angelo takes every call that comes in, but we hear from a lot of people. So let me share a couple of testimonials with you now. This testimonial is an example of differentiation. We're taking fancy shaped diamonds, diamond cutting to a whole new level. This diamond factory manager overseas said GCAL cracked the code on the oval, and it's helping us cut fancy shapes better. Thank you very much. This retailer emphasized how selling a great product is just easier because 8X sells itself. The grading is guaranteed and the cut is unsurpassed. This retailer in the northeast region of the country said, "Let me tell you, for my customers anyway, it's like GCAL is printing money. When I demonstrate the 8X certificate, I never lose the sale." Thank you very much. And finally, we heard from a consumer who literally spoke to Angelo on the phone, and it gave us proof that we offer a lot of ways to help your teams close more sales with a visual, scientific demonstration of your diamond's quality and beauty. This consumer said, "A GCAL 8X cert answers all my questions about the diamond I'm considering. That's all I need. I'm done." That's the purpose of the certificate, to help your salespeople sell, and it does the job. Thank you to this consumer. Okay. With what you see on the screen right now, a list of our exclusive 8X suppliers. With all of GCAL's research and exhaustive efforts, 8X would obviously not be possible without the cutters and manufacturers and suppliers bringing 8X to the industry. So whether at the upcoming shows, via the internet and email, or the telephone, please reach out to this exclusive list of 8X suppliers whenever you need the best of the best diamonds for your store. If you'd like a copy of the list, just let me know. Or if you'd like an introduction to any of these suppliers, let me know that as well. We'd be happy to do so. We'll be distributing the list itself from our booth at both the upcoming CBG and JCK shows. Speaking of the JCK show, we have a new booth location this year. Please be aware. We are now in 15039, 15039. It's just opposite the Plum Club, as you can see here, and right across from Jewelers Mutual Insurance. And please, if you'd like to schedule an appointment, just let us know when. We'd be happy to meet with you at the show. And if no appointment is possible, please stop by. Okay. Let's get into the Q&A. We got this is certainly not a question. We got some really nice comments from some people who are having success selling 8X. One retailer in Michigan, you guys don't know who I'm talking about, but a retailer in Michigan said he appreciates the fact that 8X is the beacon of light for his business. Please. Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate that. This is probably a quick answer, Ange, but I'll let you take it. Are there any other shapes on the horizon, and how do you decide?
Yeah, that's a question that we get all the time. Cushion and Radiant, in fact, are in progress. As I think Eric aptly described during the presentation, each shape is very unique and very challenging and can be painstaking. And so there's not a timeline specifically when Cushion and Radiant will launch, but they are heavily underway, and we hope to be able to release them this year.
Here's a comment. I really appreciate the comment because it leads to something that we want to make sure you're aware of. This attendee said, "Great visuals and examples. Thank you for providing so much information. You should be aware, if you are an 8X retailer, manufacturer, wholesaler, but if you are actively involved in 8X, many of these visuals are available to you. We'd be happy to do it, whether it's on your social media, on your website, however you want to use it. Many of these visuals are available, so please let us know." Another question, you mentioned fancy submissions and into your lab exceed rounds. Is this the same for both natural and lab grown? Ange?
Absolutely. This is a phenomenon we started seeing in 2020. I think the increase was probably driven by lab grown because of the ease of cutting rough into different shapes and the way that CBD and HPHT lends itself. But it certainly started a trend that we see on both the natural and lab grown side. And I think we see it in both categories. Fancy shapes are now definitely the majority of submissions, I think, at almost every lab.
Thank you. This question has two parts. Why has it been, um, you may or may not want to answer this, Ange, that's up to you. But the
Okay.
question is, why has it been so difficult for other labs to provide cut grades on Fancies? And the second part is, and do any other labs in fact provide a cut grade on Fancies?
Okay, so let me take the second part first, which was to other offer cut grades on Fancies. As Steve, as you mentioned, obviously at the beginning of the presentation, we've been offering a cut grade on Fancy shapes for over 15 years, and obviously an 8X for 4 different Fancy shapes now. There was one lab that did announce a cut grade system for Fancy shapes about a year ago, maybe longer than that. I've yet to see a lab report issued by them with a cut grade. So I think they technically have it, but I haven't seen it actually implemented. Why is it so difficult? I think you saw it today in the presentation why it's so difficult. But I also think one of the biggest differences about GCAL, and this is since GCAL's inception, even before I started here with Don and Pam, is that a cut grade is meant. A cut grade is basically meant to tell you how that diamond should perform, right? Most lab cut grades that don't use direct assessment, they're indicating to you, oh, if I give this a very good, I give this an excellent, telling you that's how it should perform based on whatever formulas and algorithms they use. Biggest difference at GCAL is that we directly assess the diamond. So we don't have to use predictive methodology to say, well, a diamond with these physical characteristics should perform this way. We actually assess it. So there's no guess. So because we actually directly assess the diamond for brilliance, for optical symmetry, for fire, for scintillation, that's the essence of a cut grade. It's about performance. So we're assessing it. We can accurately establish and assign cut grades to any shape, including proprietary shapes.
I've got to think that questioner got more than they bargained for. Thank you so much, Ange. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
The answer to this is absolutely yes, but I'll let one of you guys tackle it. Are there natural 8X? I've not seen one for sale, but oh,
Yes.
they're there.
They're definitely there. It is no secret that an 8X is more difficult to cut, as you probably discern from Eric's part of the presentation. The rough is more expensive in natural. It results in less yield and results in a more expensive stone. So we do certify a lot of natural 8X. They're maybe just not as prevalent as inventory in the market, but a lot are being cut and spoken for, are going to programs or to specific retailers. So every 8X is available for both natural and lab grown, equally considered.
Thank you. Another question. Let's see how we're doing on time. Okay. This question wants to know if 8X is available on the internet without getting into the names of sites. I don't think that's appropriate, but unless you want to add something to it, the answer is yeah, there are, and some of them, in fact, list 8X as the top cut grade in their cut filter. Used to be fair, very good, excellent, fair, good, very good, excellent, and then ideal. Now, after ideal, you find 8X on several locations. So yeah, the answer is yes. I don't know, unless you think differently, Ange, I don't know if we want to get into who's carrying it.
Yeah,
but the
no,
answer is
definitely. I
yes.
think you covered it. There are natural and lab grown 8X being sold online at different sites. And as you mentioned, most of them now, if they carry it, they distinguish it with a specific 8X filter. There is one question, Steve, that I'd like to address. Based on my own assessments, only an IF natural diamond with excellent or ideal cut has a similar liquid brilliance as an 8X. Okay, so I didn't read the full question before answering it, but I just want to be clear that 8X is not limited specifically to the clarity grade. So it doesn't need to be a VVS plus to be an 8X. I think probably the lowest that we've certified is probably a low SI1, high SI2. When you start getting into the I1s and lower, now you start getting into inclusions and transparency issues that would impact performance. But certainly for SI1 and above, in lab or natural, 8X is certainly suitable.
Okay, I think we just about covered it. We really appreciate everybody's attendance and joining us. Again, if you're going to be at the CBG or JCK show, we ask you to please stop by our booth. We're at table 8 at CBG and 15039 at JCK. But please give us a call, send us an email to schedule an appointment. We would love to see you. We're going to have the entire team there, including the CEO of Serene Technologies coming in from Israel. He'll be there as well. And I think that's about it. Thank you all so very, very much. Have a great rest of the week and a great season coming up and a heck of a summer. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.